Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Yay, we're on a bunch of different screens. So, we're talking about anxiety, burnout, and stress, the dirty words of being awesome. This is a second workshop. We're going to do another one. So, if you didn't catch us live, catch me live, then we are doing another one. So, you can go ahead and sign up in the next couple days. Yeah, let's jump in. Okay, so if you're on Zoom with us tonight, you're going to have the slideshow. If not, there will be a QR code that you can scan. And let me see if I can figure out how to show that to you. But yeah, I'm super excited for tonight to talk about anxiety, burnout, and stress, the dirty words of being awesome. Okay, so let's get started. Okay. The agenda for tonight is pretty easy. First of all, nice to meet you. Then we're going to take the stress profile quiz, talking about how self-regulation is sexy, and then a couple practical ways to actually jump in and start using these practices in our daily life. So, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Sarah Niblack. I'm the head nerd of Spark Practice and Nervous System Neutral. I am a professional violist based in Paris, France. I am also a former Division I scholarship rower and multiple national finalist. I've learned to play the viola 3 times. Now, this was the first time when I was little and just learning to play. The second time is after a break of about 5 years when I was going to grad school for arts administration and starting to do other things. And then the third time was more recently when I was attacked on the street and somebody broke my thumb. So I've had to learn how to get really good at practicing and really good at kind of being nice to myself if I want to be where I want to be. I'm obsessed with neuroscience. We can do so many things and we have so much agency in our little lives, and I think that's wonderful to be able to explore that and to learn more about what's possible and what we can do. I was introduced to mindfulness by my former teacher Laurent Vernet, who's no longer with us, but he was the principal violist of the Paris Opera for many years. And for him, this was really his missing element, and it turned out to be mine as well. I had this background in elite sports, I had this background in elite music, I had this obsession with neuroscience, but the thing that really brought it all together and sort of the missing element to complete the set was the mindfulness part. My personal superpower is finding flexible, transformative tools from really complex systems. And I love cheesy jokes and tough questions. So the cheesier the joke or the tougher the question, I welcome with open arms. All right, so quiz time. Now you can go to nervoussystemneutral.com and take the quiz, sign up for the workshop, take the quiz, and we're just going to go through it anyway. So if you don't have that available to you right now, grab a piece of paper and we can go through it together anyway. Okay, so here are some basics about self-regulation. In the movie, I think a wonderful way to talk about what self-regulation is and regulating our nervous system is going back to the movie 10 Things I Hate About You. I think it was from the 90s. And one of the girls in the movie says, I know you can be overwhelmed and you can be underwhelmed, but can you just be whelmed? And her friend says, I think you can in Europe. So this is really what we're looking for. Not necessarily Europe, though I live here, and I love it, but looking to get back to this sort of neutrality, just whelmed. Not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed, just whelmed. Now, what does this mean? For me, this is what I call nervous system neutral. It means that we're not activated, either underactivated or overactivated. We're just kind of in a homeostasis home base. It doesn't mean that we're asleep. It doesn't mean that we're unable to function or talk or walk around or whatever. It really just means that we're in sort of our home base. And this means also that we're able to actually sleep, we're able to actually rest and recover, and we're able to actually then activate to the level we want to activate to be able to do all the stuff we want to be able to do without stressing the system too much and not being able to function at our best. Okay, so a little bit about the brain. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. So if you've ever been to a Spark Practice talk, this is something that we've already talked about. But in all of our years of evolution, we're still pretty much the same animals, which means that our brains are incredibly complex and incredibly efficient. But what this means also is that we, when exposed to stress, think that we're going to get eaten by lions and tigers and bears. And so we flip into our stress reactions, not even responses, but reactions. We don't have access to all of our higher intellect. And it just means that we're not really benefiting from life in the way that we could be. Okay. So lions and tigers and bears, oh my, doesn't quite work anymore, because even though our brains are really efficient at keeping us safe, they're going to tell us so many things that we might not want to hear, especially when we're feeling stressed out and we're feeling in danger. And this can be perceived danger as well. But to be able to say, okay, actually, you know what? I am safe. I'm not going to get chased by lions and tigers and bears. I appreciate that my body is telling me that I am feeling vulnerable. This is great information because it just means that what I'm about to do or what I'm doing is important to me. But then to be able to have the tools to come back to nervous system neutral just means that we're able to kind of rationalize those things, but actually put into practice a couple exercises so that when we are stressed out, it doesn't lead to burnout and we don't have to be anxious about those things. And we're going to go through the definitions really clearly of anxiety, burnout, and stress, because it's really important to equip ourselves with some information, which means that we don't have to be subject to these things in the same way. Okay, so that's lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. All right, now let's move on to brains versus brains. Now, if you're on Zoom, you see the slideshow and it's just two emoticons of a brain versus a brain. Now, neurologically, we can't criticize and create at the same time. So we have two brains. And there's a first conversation that we need to have, which is that our value as a person does not change. Our value as a person is never called into question. So this paradigm of, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this right. I'm a piece of crap. I don't deserve to play. How did I get into this school? Blah, blah, blah. This kind of stuff, no, we don't longer get to talk like that. This is over. Our value as a person does not change. Each person has an absolute value of awesome, okay? Which also means that we need to treat ourselves the way that we treat other people, and think of the person that you treat the best in your life, and now treat everybody that way, including yourself, okay? So once we get that question of value judgment and character evaluation off the table, then we can start talking about practice brain and performance brain. So because we can't criticize and create at the same time, so already we're taking our self-criticism of, you know, if we're a decent person or not out of the equation. But once we've all decided, okay, we're good, let's move into this creative space. Now we're talking about practice brain and performance brain. So practice brain is when it's our detective. What do we like? What do we don't like? Oh, this could be different. I want this to sound more like this. I would really like to project this kind of feeling or this kind of ambiance. I want to feel comfortable when I walk into this board presentation. And, you know, so what if I walk in like this? Or if I structure my presentation in this way? Or if I, you know, if I'm put in my part, at the end of the last piece, to remember to bow and to turn towards the pianist. Whatever it is that we need to do that's a little bit critical, that's a discovery, refining, stuff like that. That's practice brain. Okay. Performance brain is kind of when people are talking about flow, but flow, I don't think people really have a great definition about it, but that's a whole other video. Performance brain is creative. Performance brain is like you're designing a video game and you're like, oh, and a happy little tree over here and a little babbling brook over here. And here's the blue sky and here's the dark cave of solitude, and all of that. And you're really committed to telling that story. So you can see how these two things are different, practice brain and performance brain, and how if the story that we tell ourselves is not a particularly nice story, then it can be really difficult to be able to benefit from the positive benefits of practice brain and performance brain. And it shows up that criticism shows up when we really don't want it, when we're really feeling vulnerable. And again, lions and tigers and bears, oh my, that's just our brain telling us that something's important. Okay. That's why we need the tools to be able to come back to nervous system neutral and say, I am safe. I want to be here. I've prepared this. Like, let's do it. Okay. So stress reactions are just signals. They're reactions. They're not something we have a lot of control over. This is fine. Like, this is fine. Everybody gets exposed to stress. This is a totally normal human thing. If we didn't feel stressed, it means that we have zero stimuli in our lives and we're probably just lumps on a log. So we actually do want stimuli and we do want a little bit of stress, but recognizing the signals and responding instead of reacting is going to help us understand what they mean a lot better. All right, so what is stress? Stress is a stimulation that moves past comfort into discomfort. Now we have to talk about a couple of things. Moving past comfort into discomfort is not inherently a bad thing. What's cool about it is that this is the zone of learning, but this is also potentially a zone of getting hurt. So let's think about it like sports. There's good pain and bad pain in sports. I don't know if people have felt that before or heard that before, but the good pain in sports is like your muscles are tired, but you know that you've just pushed yourself hard, but you didn't break anything. Bad pain are like things that are breaking or overuse or extended stress in ways that go past learning into unhealthiness. Okay, so again, stress is a good thing. It's stimulation that moves past comfort into discomfort, but remember, discomfort has two branches. Is it a healthy discomfort of learning, pushing our boundaries a little bit, or is it an unhealthy discomfort of breaking our boundaries and moving into this unhealthy, hurtful kind of stress? Okay, anxiety is worrying about anticipated potential stress. So what happens is that we're causing real current stress harm, destructive stress about a likely or potential future discomfort. So anxiety is causing ourselves real harm now about something that might or probably happen in the future. We often do this if we get hurt a lot. Anxiety is a normal thing, okay? But we also need tools to be able to recognize that, to know a little bit about what's happening, and to be able to move into a better regulated space that's then a lot healthier, so that we can get out of the criticism character brain and more into something that's productive and helpful, so that then, what we can do is practice the practice brain and performance brain in a very healthy and supportive way. All right, burnout. Yay! The response of a system that's been held in stress without appropriate rest for an extended period of time. Okay, so this is where the kind of stress doesn't matter. This burnout is a system that's been held in either healthy or unhealthy stress, discomfort, without appropriate rest for an extended period of time. Does this sound familiar? Yeah, 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 exactly. Right. Okay. So, show of hands on the various platforms, who has been stressed out before in the sense that they felt like they burned out? After recitals, stressy periods at work. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Keep it coming. So these are essentially the things that we're talking about tonight. Stress is not necessarily a bad thing, but there are two kinds of stress: healthy stress, unhealthy stress, growing stress, breaking stress. Okay. Anxiety is causing ourselves real harm now about anticipated future stress. Burnout is the response of a system that's been held in healthy or unhealthy stress without appropriate rest for extended periods of time. Okay, so this is the time that if you've taken your stress profile quiz to pull it out, otherwise we're going to go through it together. We know that we basically have 4 stress or fear reactions. Now, these are not responses, they are reactions. Okay, so let me know how you identify yourself in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, this is your really base reaction. Okay, this is at the very center of yourself. For example, sometimes we learn a different reaction to sort of cover up the real one. We want to get into the bottom of the thing. So our really base fear response or reaction, fight. This means that we're going to get a little bit more aggressive. Our voice might get a little bit harder, and we might, look for conflict a little bit and want to defend ourselves and protect ourselves. Flight, a lot of times this is just, I want to get out of here. I want this to be over. Let me just rush through what I'm doing. Some people in music, we start playing to, faster in a non-musical way. Or people will just sort of rush through and start to mumble and trip over what they're talking about in presentations. Freeze. Is when you just have memory slips, or you can't quite find your words, or the sensation of everything is just gone. And fawn, I love this one because it's a little bit elusive, but it's the reaction of, I just want to make sure that everybody else is okay. I'm, really accommodating. Sometimes the way this shows up on stage is that we lose our internal pulse, our own personal integrity of pitch and rhythm and stuff like that. So it also can come out and like, oh my gosh, I heard somebody cough. Oh, I hope the jury really likes me. Or I hope the client really understands what I'm talking about and they like it. Or if you're on a date, like, oh my gosh, what's the other person thinking? I hope that they like me, da, da, da. Okay, so then the second one, so please identify yourselves in the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, okay? Because that's really critical information for you. The second part of this is, how do your symptoms show up? Do they show up more in your mind, or do they show up more in your body? Now, this is a really interesting question because we tend to have a mix of a couple different things. But when symptoms show up in the mind, that's going to be like catastrophizing, If it's a fear reaction, then it could be for flight, or for fight, it could be, oh my gosh, how dare they, I'm so ready for this. I'm gonna go like kill it, and be really on my stuff and whatever. Fight in, or flight in a mental response could be, oh my gosh, I just have to get out of here. This needs to end. I just want to get off stage. I just want to get out of this meeting. I just need to get through this. I want to be elsewhere. Okay. Freeze. Those are going to be memory slips. Those are going to be looking for words. Those are going to be the sort of reaction where all of a sudden everything is gone. Everything you thought you knew how to do is gone. Fawn, the mental part of it is going to be that, oh my gosh, what is this other person thinking? They touch their nose in a weird way. They must hate me, stuff like that. And again, this is what I call brain shrapnel. Okay. Our brain is just trying to protect us. So it's throwing shrapnel so that we can be safe, because our brain is really efficient. So really, this is a good thing, even though it doesn't quite seem like it yet. Okay, so the other way that we can experience symptoms is more of a physical manifestation of these things. So for example, in fight, this could be crisping up, feeling really aggressive. On stage, this can show up as playing harder, having a harder sound, actual fighting. Flight, physically, this could be starting to talk a little bit faster, just trying to get through everything, playing faster unmusically again, stuff like that. Freeze, it can just be like forgetting how to move, forgetting how to do things. This happens a lot. And fawn, physically, this can show up as feeling like all of a sudden, what we're doing isn't quite in the pocket, and we start looking around, we're trying to figure out like what will please the other person, or please the jury, or please something outside of ourselves. And so it becomes really decentralized from our body to the outside. Okay, there's another element of this, which is guess culture versus ask culture. Now, in a lot of profiles and talking about stress, this isn't something we necessarily get to, but I think it's really important because, and there are a couple of these things that maybe you've seen before and maybe you haven't, but guess culture is when you create a space for somebody to offer help, okay? And ask culture is going to be a lot more direct and just asking for help that you need. When these two combine, and we don't know this, it can be really awkward. So we want to make sure that we have an idea of what our culture at the bottom of ourselves really is, so that we can understand how our stress and how our fear is showing up, and whether just filtering through that cuts out a lot of problems anyway. Okay, now the next part of this are attachment styles. Now, what's so cool about this is that the way that we tend to attach to people or situations or react is really unique. We're all different. There are some similarities, but none of this is a judgment. It's just information. Okay, so attachment styles, we have anxious attachment. So when we're not in our best space and we're not our best selves, we're going to be, kind of clingy, kind of calling somebody a lot, trying to ask for reassurance, making sure that everything's okay. There's avoidant, which is, okay, I'm just going to give that some space, like check in a couple days, maybe. When, we just want to disengage and leave space for stuff, okay? Then there's secure, which is a balanced version of both of these. Sometimes we can recognize that we're getting hurt a little bit, but we have ways to repair. And then there's disorganized, which is kind of a combination of anxious and avoidant. And usually this comes from a trauma situation, And it's kind of a mixed bag of wanting to connect, but not knowing how. And so it can be a little bit scary. So now normally you have a profile that's just yours, and maybe you're freeze, in the body, anxious, and ask culture. That's a pretty unique situation, right? Here's what we can actually do about it. Here's a little bit more about how this actually fits together, okay? Practice makes pathways. Practice makes pathways. Normally we hear practice makes perfect, practice makes permanence, practice makes a lot of things. Well, guess what? Yes, and really, practice makes pathways. So imagine that you have a superhighway. The superhighway started out as, just land or forest or whatever. And over time, somebody built a road, and then they built different kinds of roads and recognized a need to have a superhighway there. And so eventually built a superhighway. It's possible to shut down the superhighway and build a different road. It's the same in our brains, okay? So this is where neuroplasticity comes in, and this is so exciting because it's one of my favorite subjects in the world. And the fact that practice makes pathways means that we have so much agency in how we can coach ourselves to show up and come back to nervous system neutral, right? So in the slideshow, the next slideshow says, just try it. Again, we are on a couple different platforms tonight, but just try it. So a lot of these exercises and a lot of these materials are available to everybody. They're ideas that, some are frameworks that I'm proposing, but really just experiment with this, see what works for you. And again, all I ask is that you give it a go. The worst thing that can happen is that now you know more about yourself and you have a couple tools for when you're next stressed out. The worst thing that could happen is that you forget them. And then when it really matters and you're feeling really stressed out, maybe you'll remember them. Okay, so here's a question for everybody. What is your most important relationship in your life? This could be as a musician, as a partner, as a person. There are a couple people who have taken my classes before who know this answer. Yep. Okay, but we also have a couple different answers too. Yes, okay. So I'm seeing some husband, teacher. Okay, yeah, trick question. The most important relationship in your life is with yourself. Now, even if that seems a little bit weird at first or selfish or whatever, having a healthy relationship with yourself is the best way to then show up in the world and be able to talk to people in the way that you want to, support the people that you want to support, for yourself, for your students, for your music making, for your partners, for whatever. But when you cultivate this healthy relationship with yourself, then you can really get in touch with what's going on and be able to have that agency to come back to nervous system neutral, that really healthy place from which we can act and feel our best and tap into what I call our radiant and resonant authenticity. Okay. So the next question is, how do I want to feel? Now, this is really important because this is where we bring in intention. And Spark Practice is the intentional practice system, and everything we do is driven with intention, right? So how do I want to feel? Now, notice that this isn't what auditions do I want to win? What do I want my life to look like? What kind of house do I want to live in? No, this is going to be more, well, I want to feel confident. I want to feel like I am living the life that I really would like to live. I feel comfortable in my home. I feel excited about, what's going on in my life. Those are the kinds of things that are really important and going to be really helpful. So again, what's my most important relationship? Trick question, it's ourselves. And how do I want to feel? How do I want to show up in my life? All right, so we're going to talk briefly about the mindsets. Now, this is about our outlook on the world and kind of how we show up in the world. So the mindsets are fixed versus growth, lack versus abundance, and fear versus courage. What this means is that fixed versus growth, fixed is going to be more like, my gosh, I'm never going to be that talented. That person's so much smarter than me. I'm really terrible at math, blah, blah, blah. Growth is exhibited more with the, oh, well, I can learn that. I haven't spent a lot of time on it yet. Or, if that's something that I want to look into in the future, I'm absolutely sure that I can master it with, some training. Lack versus abundance, we talk a lot about in money. The idea of lack is like, there's not enough pie to go around. And abundance is like, there's always going to be enough pie. So this could be like, I'm not really going to share this secret with people because maybe they're going to steal it and then I won't have it anymore. Whereas abundance might be great. Like, let's share ideas and see what's possible and, make something even better. Fear versus courage is really based on the idea that every decision that we make in our lives comes from fear or comes from courage or love. Okay. So now imagine two people. Imagine one person who exhibits this fixed mindset, who exudes a sort of a lack energy and makes all of their decisions based in fear. Can you see them in your head? Yeah, it's a person. We all know people like that. Well, sometimes we are people like that. All right, now imagine somebody with a growth mindset who exudes an abundance energy, who makes most of their decisions based in courage or love. Can you see that person? These are very different people. And what we were talking about before is that, all of our natural reactions are natural. It says nothing about our character. Okay. None of it is a value judgment. It's just information. Now we have some frameworks and some context to be able to move, into the space we want to be in. And what's missing there is intention. So then when we start bringing intention into what we do with a framework that, is helpful and a basic understanding of how this stuff works, then we move the boat in the direction that's best for us. Okay. So you are the action hero. Okay. What this means is that you actually have a lot more agency than necessarily you think. Okay. So we're going to start with a couple tools that work for everybody and then give a couple references for each distinct profile and sort of the big lines so that you understand yourself a little bit better. You have some practical tools today to walk out with, and that you can start making these changes and start these practices in your own life. Okay, so the first one is what I call 4-6 breathing. If we've ever had a conversation about stage fright, anxiety, performing, life in general, we've probably talked about 4-6 breathing. But what this is we breathe in for 4 and out for 6. Okay, so you can do 6 breaths. This is one of the quickest ways to start regulating your nervous system and come back to nervous system neutral. Okay, because when you're breathing out longer than you're breathing in, we're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps remind ourselves that we are safe, we want to be there, and that we can do, to come back to ourselves and our internal integrity. Okay. So another trick with 4-6 breathing is to add the intention of reminding ourselves, being really careful about the conversations that we have with ourselves in our head, reminding ourselves that we are safe, that we do want to be there, that we are capable, that our absolute value is awesome. All of these things that we're starting to learn, this is the time to practice putting those in. All right, so let's do a couple 4-6 breaths together. We're going to breathe in for 4 and out for 6. And in for 4, out for 6. You can put your hand on your heart and your tummy. You can do kind of whatever feels good to you. In for 4. Now remind yourself, out for 6, remind yourself, I am safe. I am good. I want to be. So go ahead and keep doing that as we talk about the next couple things. All right. Now that we've talked about 4-6 breathing, and you'll notice that I'm not a huge fan of blocking breathing or doing square breathing. A lot of breathing exercises ask us to hold our respiration somewhere. I'm not a huge fan personally, just because I know as musicians, we tend, especially coming from the music space, a lot of us tend to hold our breaths. So we want to make sure that everything is moving all the time and that we have that energy that's moving around. Okay. All right. So the second thing that we're going to do tonight is asking ourselves a little silly question at first, but it's a very powerful question, which is, how's my little plant? So come with me on the adventure. Go ahead and close your eyes. And at the very inside of your tummy, imagine a little plant. Now, this could be a tree, it could be a flower, it could be a shrubbery, it could be whatever, but imagine your little plant. Okay, when you have your little plant, all we're gonna do is ask it how it's doing. Hey, buddy, how are you doing? Go ahead and ask your little plant. Hey, buddy, how are you doing? What do you need? Okay, and go ahead and come back to the room. Yes, okay. So what you just did was meditate. And all this means is that you're having a conversation with the inside of yourself. Congratulations, you did it. And so even this question is really helpful because it starts that conversation with ourselves. It starts that conversation in a positive, healthy way with ourselves to be able to understand kind of what's going on in our own personal weather system, right? So 4-6 breathing and how's my little plant? Super important tools. All right, so then let's talk about some stuff that's more related to the specific profiles that we mentioned earlier. For people who experience generally mental symptoms, okay, so this is when our fear profiles rear their ugly heads, but really in the brain first, more than in the body. We're going to do 2 things. We're going to hold on to the walls and get back into our body. And then we move into the body-based exercises. So what hold on to the walls means is that in your mind, you're going to imagine a stable wall, a railing, something like that, and just grab onto it. You know, in the storm of what's happening in our minds, we acknowledge it's a storm. We say, okay, I realize this is important to me. I'm having all sorts of stress reactions right now. I'm just going to hold on to something stable and firm and come back. Okay. And then what we want to do is connect that with our body. And that can be the kind of thing where we use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where we start to say, okay, here's something that I notice about the room. Here, you know, we go through the different senses and we say, you know, I taste my tongue in my mouth. I taste the water I just drank, or, you know, something a little bit salty or whatever. What can I hear? I can hear people on the street outside and the buzz of my refrigerator. What can I see? I can see 4 screens in front of me and people on a webinar. um, what can I feel? I can feel my palms are a little bit sweaty and I can feel my clothes on my body. Yeah, and just go through the senses like that. And that's a really great way to start grounding back down and coming back to our body, especially if we deal with mostly mental systems. Okay, so if we deal with mostly physical symptoms, and by the way, for musicians, if we're talking about ways of dealing with performance anxiety, etc., we talk a lot about, no, we don't talk a lot about, but talk a lot about beta blockers. Now, beta blockers work only on physical symptoms. So they potentially could be a helpful element if you decide to do that with your doctor. However, beta blockers don't work on mental stress, okay? So just know that if you're looking for sort of a way to deal with anxiety and performance anxiety and stuff like that, beta blockers, they don't work on mental symptoms. All right, so if you're somebody who deals more with physical symptoms, what we're gonna do is we're gonna ground the energy and do energy dialysis, okay? So grounding the energy means that we're recognizing that we feel stressed out and we feel our fear reactions flaring up, okay? We acknowledge that something's important to us and we're having this energy come through, okay? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna send that energy into the ground, okay? Through our feet, through our butt, if we're seated, if we're seated. Once we have that energy connection to the ground again, we're gonna start what I call energy dialysis, which means that we're gonna pull energy up from the ground, send it around our body in a path, and send it back down, okay? This is just cleaning the system, right? So what this means is that you pull energy up in one leg, you send it up the side of your body, through your arm, through your hand, go through all the fingers, back around, you send it up and over your head, send calming down your face, do the other arm, do the other fingers, and then back down the arm, send it through your body and send it out the other leg. You can see how this recycling, this intention, sending this energy intentionally through your body is really helpful, okay? So some stuff that we're gonna be working on in the next little bit is really establishing your complete and unique stress antidote. With the quiz, you've established your stress profile. And already that information is really precious because we really need to know kind of what our own composition is. We each have a unique profile. This is normal, it's healthy. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just the way that we work, and that's a magical, complex system. But if we don't know very much about it and we don't have any tools to deal with it, then we're really at a disadvantage. So already knowing your stress profile and these basic tools to be able to do something about it is incredible. However, if you want to discover your complete stress antidote, there's a class that's coming out called Nervous System Neutral that goes through all of these things where you're going to have really rich information base to be able to work on your own nervous system neutral and be able to call it in really quickly, to understand more about the brain, to understand more about what neuroplasticity can do and self-regulation can do, how to self-regulate for yourself, and then also how that relates in crisis, in sort of emergency situations, having tools that really help in emergency situations, and then also how they relate in relationships to other people, whether it's at work or at home or on stage. So those are the areas that we're going to be covering in the class. And I'm really excited to have been able to spend this time with you tonight, because I think that nervous system regulation is so important. And it's one of those things where it seems so obvious. There's a lot of research out there about this, but it's not something that we're quite talking about in like a really common space yet with a really easy, flexible framework. So please consider signing up for the class and learning more. And just before we sign off, remember, you are the action hero. You have so much potential to bring this healthy relationship to yourself in a way that helps every part of your life show up with your resonant authenticity, right? So use this agency that we have to support yourself for that healthy stress. Remember, we talked about healthy and unhealthy stress, but stress is actually can be a really good thing. Okay. We talked about how anxiety is just harm that we're causing ourselves now about perceived stress in the future, healthy or unhealthy stress. And burnout is when a system has been exposed to stress, unhealthy or healthy stress, for so long without appropriate rest. However, we have tools to be able to change the conversation and to come back to nervous system neutral. And I'm so glad to be able to share them with you. So thank you so much for tonight. We're going to sign off on Instagrams, but we're going to continue with some questions on Zoom. And if you're interested in coming back to a workshop, we're going to have some Q&A sessions. And then also in the nervous system neutral class, the format of the class is going to be really fun. There's online modules, 5 different online modules talking about the brain, self-regulation basics, your stress antidote, emergencies, and self-regulation in relationships. And then moving further with that, those are all online, so you go at your own pace. And then we have office hours where we can have sort of an AMA, ask me anything, and we can really take that learning further. So please consider signing up. I look forward to continuing the conversation in the class or online. And yeah, we'll see you really soon. Happy practicing.